Yeah, but what a privilege it is to have done Sani, and it was a great experience, and it's good to be back at church in one piece, that is, after Sani. And yes, what a privilege. It was such an unbelievable experience. But, you know, leading up to Sani was actually such a great experience as well. Having the Benoni boys, seeing them there, shining their light for Jesus, hearing Daryl pray on day 2 before we started was absolutely, it just made me feel like, yes, the presence of God is just following us. The favor of God is just with us. And it's really nice to hear that familiar voice, the one you know, Sunday after Sunday, just shining his light for Jesus, whether he's here, whether he's at Sani. And it's really amazing to see what God's doing through you, boy. I really appreciate you. But the preparation stage for Sani was unbelievable, like I said. That almost for me was better than the actual event itself. I'm thinking of those rides we were riding and we're chatting and we're asking advice. Rod and the boys, and they help with all the love in the world. They just they shower you with information and tips and tricks and what to do. And they just help me through the whole preparation stage. There's a doctor here, he will kill me if I tell you who he is, but he's been helping me pull my life straight. You know what they do, those chiropractors. But I'm not mentioning any names. But he just helped me in the whole preparation phase for Sani. And he said, come, let's make sure that you're firing on all cylinders when you get to Sani. And that whole experience just made me feel so loved and so valuable to people around me. And that's an amazing feeling if you feel loved and cared for, isn't it? Yes, guys. So I really, the build-up towards Sani was an unbelievable experience. And you guys don't know how much you've imparted into my life and how much I appreciate it in the tough times when, you know, when your body tells you, you've hit your limit. It's those thoughts that pushes you far beyond those limits that you thought you had, is the fact that you are loved and cared for. And through these guys helping me prepare, you know, you get to that hill and you think, sheesh, and all that information just comes back. It's like information on demand. And my mates, with the preparation, they help me to be a better version of myself. You know, it's like 2.0. Eh? So if I had to do this Sani a year back, day 1, thank you. Because I'm glad to report that the preparation was enough, and I thought it was just going to be for day 1, but we made day 2 and day 3, and by God's grace, we really enjoyed it. And the next time, there's me and my partner, thanks to my beautiful wife that did the slideshow, finishing with big smiles on our face. I don't know if I was more happy to be finished or just happy that I made it. But it was an unbelievable experience. The memories from that will always remain a fond memory in my mind. Now, things happen for a reason. Have you ever looked back on your life and you can see certain events happen, and you find yourself in that current situation and you think, geez, but what happened back then prepared me for the situation I'm in now. Isn't that so? And sometimes we are in certain situations and we don't know, we don't understand why are we going through this. You know, we've been around this block. We've been there, we've done that, got the t-shirt. You know what, the guys that have done the Sani 6 times, they still train for it. It doesn't mean that you've done it once, you can just go and do it again. You've got to keep on preparing. And life is exactly the same, friends. You know, we go through stages and like I say, we don't even realize it. But we're being shaped and molded and prepared for something else. Maybe for a situation in the future. And then when that better version of yourself, you know, 2.0 comes out, in that situation you realize, but wait a minute. Last time when I was in this situation, I completely lost the plot. But this time I stayed cool. Wow, okay, I can see there's some improvement happening. And that's why we prepare. That's why God prepares us. Is because He wants us to handle things differently. And that is what we're going to speak about today. We're going to learn, because learning from the words of Jesus, because He was the ultimate example. So we're going to learn. And today's message might not be new news to you, but it's still the good news. The Bible always stays relevant. It doesn't get outdated. It's not old news. It's not like, I've heard this before. And even if you have heard this before, I pray that God will stir something new in you today. Because today the title of my message is Be Prepared. Be prepared. Because like anything in life, if you prepare well, generally things end well, right? Generally, not always, generally. But if you don't prepare well, then most of the times they don't end well either. And there was this lady in the US, and she loved her coffee just as much as we do here at Freedom, you know. Coffee gets us started and Jesus keeps us going, eh? Yeah, so it's like the kickstart you need in the morning. So this lady, she goes to her favorite Starbucks and she's sitting there. She orders herself a large cappuccino, sitting at that same table so that she always sits at. Have you guys got that routine? Yeah, I also have that. You walk into a restaurant, you sit, if it's open, you go sit at the same place. So here's this lady, she's parking off at her favorite place at Starbucks, and she's sitting there sipping on her coffee, and she's making a list of things. What do I still need to do? And I've still got to get this and buy this, and you know what, I still got to do that and wash the curtains. You see, she's busy making a list because her brother is visiting her the next day. So she's thinking, okay, there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen here. We need to move those boxes out of the guest bedroom. We need to wash the bedding and the curtains. And with females, it's normally a very long list that needs to take place. If it was us oaks, we would move the boxes off the bed onto next to the bed and there's place to sleep. It's sharp. So, but this lady's making a long list. She's making a list there. And while she's making a list, sipping on her coffee, her phone rings. And who's bothering me on my coffee break here? But it's her brother. And she's like, hello? And he's like, hello, sis. How are you? No, I'm fine. Yeah, listen, I just wanted to check. Where are you? She's like, I'm at Starbucks having coffee. Why? Oh, well, I'm in front of your gate. I'm waiting to be let in. Have you guys ever had that experience? Never, eh? Yeah. So needless to say, her face just drops. And she's like, but you're only supposed to arrive tomorrow, not today. And he goes like, oh, sis, read that message that I sent you. The arrival date's today. Wow. So in a panic, she jumps up, she spills her beautiful coffee. We don't cry over spilled milk, but coffee. Yo. Yo, that's another discussion. It's actually a whole preach for another day. But off she goes, and she's rushing home to go open for her brother. Friends, the moral of this story is not to spill your coffee. No. But we need to read the message carefully. We need to read the message carefully so that we can be more prepared for when Jesus comes. That is the most important thing of your life, is to be prepared for when Jesus comes. He has the message, and he says, please study it carefully so that you can be ready for when he comes. It's unbelievable. The second thing that we can learn from this story is don't get caught up in bucket list stuff. Still want to do this, still want to do that, still want to buy this, still want to get that, everything before Jesus comes. I remember many years back, my one friend got married, and on his wedding night, he says, tomorrow Jesus can come. And I'm like, what do you mean? He says, no, because I said I want to get married, and tomorrow Jesus can come. Don't get caught up with those bucket list things, friends. Make sure that you're ready now. Be prepared and on your guard all the time. So it's important to prepare, right? Preparation is very important. Now, in today's preparation, we're going to look at the book of Luke. We're going to look at the book of Luke. And Luke wrote the book of Luke it's a lot of looking, eh? To educate his friend Theophilus. You see, Luke wanted him to know Jesus, and he wanted him to be prepared to follow Jesus. So he was preparing Theophilus to follow Jesus. So he was trying to help a friend out. So he writes this book, and it's not the main reason, but it's one of the reasons, so that his friend can learn more about Jesus and be prepared to follow Jesus. And the book of Luke touches on a few PSs. I can see the ladies go. Now, the book of Luke touches on a few PSs, and I'm not referring to the chocolates. No. And I can see the guys are saying, well, what are you referring to? Well, boys, not PlayStation either. No, it's not that. PS stands for preparation steps. Okay, preparation steps. That's what we're going to be looking at. So Luke writes the book of Luke, and he gives us some preparation steps. He gave Theophilus some preparation steps on how to follow Jesus well. And we'll be taking a look at the book of Luke today. And we're going to turn to the book of chapter 12. And I want you to look at what the heading says at chapter 12. In my NLT study Bible, it says teaching and preparation for crisis along the way. That's the heading of Luke chapter 12 in the NLT study Bible. So immediately I thought, okay, we're going to get some teaching. We're going to be prepared. Okay, there's going to be some preparing that takes place. But then I didn't like so much the part about crisis. I was like, sure, I don't know. I think I've got enough crisis in my life. We're facing a crisis at the moment. I don't think I have much capacity for crisis at this stage of my life. So then I thought, let me go look at different translations. Maybe there's a better heading, So then I go to the Message one and it says you can't hide behind a religious mask. Wow. Then I'm like, maybe crisis sounds better. So I'm going like, oh, that crisis. Okay, I'm with you. Okay. Can we see where Jesus is going with this story? So turn with me to the book of Luke, chapter 12, verse 1, and let's read together. Meanwhile, when a crowd of many thousands had gathered, so that they were trampling on one another, Jesus began to speak first to his disciples, saying, "Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy." Preparation step number 1, PS1. Don't be a hypocrite. Then I was like, sure, this is not preparing or teaching. This is solid stuff. This is a warning. It says, don't be a hypocrite. Now, hypocrisy, it means that your behavior does not align with your beliefs. So what you say and what you do are two different things. You're not walking the talk, as people would say. Last week in Michelle's sermon, she preached about, are you a citizen of the kingdom? How beautiful was that message? And is your citizenship visible through your behavior? Can people see that you are a citizen of the kingdom of God because of the way that you behave? Or does our actions not align with our beliefs? Are we hypocrites? That's the question that they're posing here, friends. And it is unbelievable because our behavior is important. Our behavior is important. Have you heard that saying, action speak louder than words? We're fast to use that. But today, maybe God's challenging us to say, listen, let's do an introspection. Let's look at ourselves. And do our actions speak louder than our words? And then Luke describes this hypocrisy as a yeast. And I'm thinking, what has a yeast got to do with hypocrite? So let me just explain that, because if any baker would know that anything that you want to put some yeast to, you only need a little bit, and it will actually infect everything. Or can I say agitate is a different word that you would like to use. And then it causes a reaction, and then obviously it flares up, right? Now, I think we should understand this very well in today's times with the pandemic around us. It takes one person to infect millions around the world. And then Luke is writing this book and he says, be careful because of the hypocrisy. It's like a yeast of the Pharisees. And it only took a little. It only took a little for them to influence the people. And eventually an uprising started against Jesus. And that's why he says, be careful for hypocrisy. Don't be a hypocrite. Remember the story of the Good Samaritan? Now, don't switch off because we've heard this a million times. But we all know the story so well. We find it in Luke 10, and we're not going to turn there. But there's this Jewish man that was robbed and beaten and left for dead next to the road, right? We all know that part. And then first we know that a priest comes along, and he sees the Jewish man, and he turns over to the other side of the road, and he continuing on. He turns a blind eye, and he does not help the Jewish man that's injured. Secondly, Levite comes past, and he sees, but he carries on past. And it's quite amazing that none of these two stopped to help this Jewish man. Because just some context, it's amazing that this parable is written with a priest and a Levite. Because the priests, they were responsible for the spiritual leadership of the Jewish nation. So they were seen as like high up religious people, right? And then you get the Levite, they were experts at law. So they knew, they were well educated. And here's these well educated two men, and they represent or they portray religious men, but yet the religious people, they know the law, but they don't act according to it. In today's times, I think they would have made great politicians, right? Just a side note there. And I was going to say, it's like having a Daryl and a Dean, but you guys are not at all like these guys. I'm really blessed. God was just showing me how you guys, you represent not religiousness, but there's a relationship. You see, religious is from the outside. It wants to look good from the outside. And relationship with God is good from the inside. And we've got a priest and we've got a man that knows the law, but he lives according to it. The whole of COVID-3 is wearing his mask wherever we go, because that's what the law states. It's what we need to do. And we honor you for that, but thanks for your actions. It's a privilege to know you guys. You're living the life that Jesus has asked us to live. And then finally, a good Samaritan stops by and he helps the Jewish man. So we have the priest and the Levite in this parable. Then we've got a Samaritan helping a Jewish guy. Those people don't sit around the same campfire. They are actually enemies. They're seen as enemies. But yet the Samaritan man says, I'll help you. Because that's what I want to do. That's what God called me to do. And the Samaritans, they were seen as an inferior mixed race. People looked down at them. Like, worthless. Waste. But yet this Samaritan man helps this Jewish man and he takes him and he makes sure that he gets taken care of. Unbelievable story how God uses these three examples just to show to us it doesn't matter of your religious status. It matters what's happening on the inside. Amen? Yeah. Solid stuff that. Jeez. So the priest and the Levite, they believe to be religious, lovers of God and lovers of man, but they don't do anything to help this Jewish man, which is one of their own, friends. They leave one of their own on the side of the road to bleed to death. It's crazy. The high ups ended up being the hiccups in the story. Hypocrites, to make a long story short. Hypocrites. And then I asked the question, I'm like, are we any different today? Because I'm saying, God, how does this story apply to today? Are we any different? Because we're facing this pandemic and the world's in need. We can find so much need in a 10-kilometer radius. We don't need to immigrate to Middle Africa to go help people. In our 10-kilometer radius, there's too much work for us to handle. But are we doing anything about it? That is what I'm asking today. Because you see, I think we don't have any excuse because we know better. But yet we judge that person who helps the other person. We look down at them and go like, why would you help that guy? Why would you help that guy? Because it feels to me like we're hiding behind this pandemic. We're using it as an excuse not to help. Oh, when things get better, maybe then I'll help. Or maybe when the economy stabilizes a bit more, then I'll help. Maybe when things just settle down and the virus goes away, then I'll help. Maybe then it's too late. That's the reality of it. We look back at the story of the Good Samaritan and we saw zero action from the religious people. Zero action. But let's look at another story. A story where faith in action is displayed beautifully for us to see. Remember the story of the short tax collector that climbed in that fig tree? I laughed when I read that because even climbing a fig tree, we've got one in the backyard. That's a mission. So here's a short guy. His name is Zacchaeus, remember? So Zacchaeus at that stage was a notorious sinner, the Bible says. And I quoted it, a notorious sinner. I didn't know that you got secret sinners and like medium and then notorious, like well-known sinners. But Zacchaeus, he was a well-known sinner, right? He was notorious at that point in time. And Jesus walks up to him and he says, Zacchaeus, come down from the tree. So Zacchaeus comes down. He's like, yes, Lord. He says, hey, Zacchaeus, In front of everyone. This is in public, right? In front of everyone, he says, how about I have dinner at your house tonight? How about I be a guest at your house tonight? And I can imagine the people surrounding them thinking, what? Jesus, do you know who you're talking to? This is a notorious sinner. And I can imagine what Zacchaeus must have been thinking. He's like, is my house ready for guests? And then I carried on reading, and it was actually the opposite. Zacchaeus couldn't care what his house looked like, because Luke 19 verse 6 says, Zacchaeus took Jesus to his home in great excitement and joy. Huh? So he was like excited. He couldn't care what his house looked like. He was like, come, you're welcome at my house any day. Doesn't matter what it looks like. And then in verse 7, I didn't put it up there, but the people muttered. How nice is that word? The people that saw this, they muttered because he was going to go have supper with a notorious sinner. How much do we mutter when we see other people helping other people? We mutter. Ugh, why would you deal with that person? He's such a sinner. Hey, Daryl, why don't you come spend 3 days at my house in a week, because I'm like a religious guy, No, Daryl's busy helping the lost. That's what he's called to do. But the people mutter because, the pastor doesn't spend enough time with me, because he's busy attending to the sinners as God has called him to do. It's unbelievable how much we can learn from the story. Now let's carry on reading in verse 8 and let's see what happens next. So meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord. And if I've cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. And Jesus responds and he says, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. So he says, this man has shown himself. Now that tells me that Zacchaeus had a visible change in his heart. Something happened because he realized, I need to do something about this. I can say whatever I want. But then Zacchaeus says, you know what? My behavior needs to line up with my belief. I need to start walking the talk here. So I need to start giving back. I need to start sowing. I need to help. And that's exactly what happened, because Zacchaeus his eyes just went open instantly. We know this because he could see it by his actions. He was an inexperienced child of God, a brand new, born again, saved, and yet he changes in a heartbeat. And then you get the religious people that's been in church for 50, 100 years, and they have no fruit. There's no action. Zero action. You see, Zacchaeus went looking for Jesus. He went looking because he climbed that tree just so that he can see him. He went searching. But we don't search for Jesus, do we? We want him to search for us. He does. But you need to go looking, friends, like Zacchaeus did. And he climbed that tree in front of everyone. Imagine how embarrassing that must have been. I mean, I think it's still the same today, and I think it was back then. Only children climb trees, right? I don't know. Have times changed? Because I haven't been to a braai where the kids are braaiing and the adults are climbing trees. Unless I don't get invited to those. Is there like a certain tree climb club that you need to belong to? Rich tax collectors weren't climbing trees back in the day. It's not an everyday thing. So he made a fool out of himself to make sure that he could see Jesus. He made sure that he could see Jesus. Imagine Elon Musk climbing a tree today. You're going to think the oak's lost it. But Zacchaeus was ready to change. He couldn't care what he said, today I am changing my ways. Not my words, my ways. There's a difference. You can change your words. You can preach. You can say, brother, you can speak Christianese, all you like. But if your ways don't change, nothing much has changed. So Zacchaeus says, today I'm changing my ways. I will follow Jesus visibly through my actions. And then Jesus says, I've come to seek and save the lost. You know those people that muttered? Why is he going with a sinner? Because that's exactly why he came. Didn't come to entertain the religious. He says the sick needs the doctor. So he attends to Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus' life has changed. And out of gratitude, Zacchaeus turns around and he says, Jesus, I'll show you how grateful I am through my actions, not through my words. Unbelievable story that. This brings me to the next PS, preparation step, not the chocolate. PS2, don't be greedy. The shots are being fired here. Luke 12, we're going to read from verse 15. Then he said to them, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in abundance of possessions. And then Jesus carries on to tell them the parable of the rich fool who had abundant crops, but he didn't give any of those crops to the others. He just sat down and he's like, geez, what am I going to do with this abundance of crops? And he thought he was smart. He says, I'm going to break down these barns that are too small, and I'm going to build bigger ones so I can store more. And then in the end it says, then I will sit back and I will relax and I will be merry. Now let's read from verse 20 there and listen to God's reply here. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. You see, friends, greed is to be rich in possessions, but poor towards God. That's what he's saying here. He says, your possessions, you can have lots of them, but if you are poor towards God, that's greed. That's greed, friends. And our purpose is not to be greedy. Our purpose is not to be rich in possessions. Our purpose on this planet is to be rich towards God. Amen? Sure, friends, we mustn't be fools. We mustn't be fools like this rich man. Don't be a barn builder. Be a giver, man. You see, greed is not so much about having enough. A lot of people think if I have enough, then I will be enough. You see, and greed is not about having enough, it's actually trying to be enough. That's what greed is. If you take away the possessions, it's those people, there's an underlying thing. They're trying to be enough. They're trying to show the world, look, I've got all these things. Am I good enough for you? Am I accepted? Am I enough? Sure. And then Jesus says, you fool. You fool. And he's not referring to someone with low intelligence. In Scripture, a fool is not someone with low intelligence, friends. It's someone who dishonors and disobeys God. So when he says, you fool, he's not saying, hey, you doof. No. He's saying you are disobedient and you are dishonoring to God. That's what he's referring to, friends. So the warning against greed goes hand in hand with disobedience. And that's why he warns us against it. He says, don't be greedy. Because if you're going to be greedy, you're going to be disobedient. And I can't use you. You can have lots of things. But if you're hanging on to them with all you got for dear life, I can't use you. You're disobedient. You see, to be rich towards God, friends, is to have a close relationship with him. And to fill your life with spiritual things. Things that have eternal value. Do you realize that's a thing? You could fill your life with goods, but they're going to be temporary. But if you fill your heart with spiritual things, the things of God, those things have eternal value. There was a lady that worked with my wife a couple of years back, and to this day, she asks herself one question when she goes to bed at night. She would get into bed and she would ask herself this one question. What have I done today that has eternal value? What have I done today that has eternal value? Friends, what have we done today that has eternal value? What have we done yesterday? What have we done in the last year that has eternal value? You can say, oh, I bought myself a new car, bought a new house. You're not ticking eternal value in any of those things. What have we done in our lives that has eternal value of late? See, our lives become so filled with all this technology and these marketing things telling you need this, then you will be that. You need to wear this, then you'll be that. We get so distracted that we don't have time for God anymore because we're so busy trying to be enough. We're so busy trying to be someone. And God's saying, no, I just need you to be rich towards me. I just need to spend more time with you so that we can have a rich relationship with one another. That's all. Let's have something that has eternal value. But yet we're chasing the things of the world. You see, friends, because of our lack of relationship with God, we've allowed greed and hypocrisy to slip into our lives. A lot of people won't come to church because they say there's a lot of hypocrites. And then you think, just how can they say that? Church is a lovely place. Doesn't happen here. It happens in the marketplace. I saw that oak in church, and then tomorrow he was flicking everyone out of their socks. Self-control. It's one of the fruits of the Spirit, guys. You see, because of our lack of relationship with Christ, we're running on spiritual empty. And we've been faking it till we make it for so long. And we're running on the spiritual empty. And I can tell you now that we won't survive on spiritual empty anymore. Because the world is in need. The world is in need. Now more than ever, we need to be ready, friends. With this pandemic we're facing, we cannot afford to keep running on empty like we have. Because we just won't withstand the amount of stress that's out there. The amount of anxiety that we're feeling. That the world around us is feeling, friends. We won't withstand it. The unsurety. It's crazy. So we need to stop. Stop. And rest. And refuel. Stop, rest, and refuel. It's time on Sundays to stop and rest and refuel. Fill yourself with the things of eternal value. You see, make time to fuel and fill your heart with the things of God, friends. Because filling your heart with the things of God will give you that peace that surpasses all understanding. And then something will happen on the outside. A visible change will take place. When the world is stressing, you will have a peace that surpasses all understanding. When the world is anxious, you will have a peace that surpasses all understanding. When the world is worried, you will have a peace that surpasses all understanding. That's what it boils down to. The same thing. The recipe doesn't change. The core ingredient is draw close to me, and I'll draw near to you, and you will have peace. This brings me to preparation step 3. PS3. Do not worry. Luke 12, verse 22. Let's read from verse 22. Then Jesus said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, or what you will eat, or about your body and what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. So life is more than food, and our bodies are more than clothes. So do not worry. Easier said than done, hey? Easier said than done. Because with the moment I saw this topic, I'm like, God, can I skip this one? How about we just go over to the easier ones? Because, this is a toughie. It's easier said than done. We as humans, we're very strange. We wake up in the morning and then you worry what's for dinner. That's like a whole day away, technically, but you still worry. And then on Sunday you're worrying, what am I going to wear to that meeting tomorrow? And I need to look good for that meeting, right? So what am I going to wear? And to top it off, we always worry about how much things can I gather, and protect. It's like I see this picture of a chicken lying on an egg, and it's like, mine. no touch. We try and gather things and then we like insure it because we want to protect it, Like, no one's allowed to touch this thing, man. It's mine. Strange people. It reminds me of that story. Have you seen that TV series called Hoarders? Yeah, I can see the woman nudging their men and then... Listen, that's a super interesting series to watch. And just to see the kind of things that people hoard is unbelievable. I'm a bit of a Hot Wheel hoarder myself, so I can't really talk out of experience here. I know some bicycle hoarders here, but I won't look at any directions specifically or mention any names. But yeah, and out of that program, Hoarders, they've actually done a study. They took a whole number of middle-income families, right? And they did a study, and they found that 25% of middle-income families have enough space left in their garage to park a car. 25%. The other 75% owns more goods than what they've got storage for in the house. And they use the garage as extra space, right? And the stuff that's in the garage hasn't been used in years. And then if someone comes in and say, you should flog this stuff, they're like, never. Can't sell that. I might need it. Like, maybe, I can't, no. But it's an old bowl or buck full of screws and stuff. You can throw that away. No, I might need that one in there. I can see the women and the men going, look, they're giving each other that COVID shake, but not with the elbow to elbow. It's like elbow to ribs, eh? Yeah, but it was interesting. And one of the things that this study also found is that having possessions made people feel safe. It made them feel secure. That's why they hang on to these things, because if I've got lots of stuff, then I'm safe and secure. And it's quite an interesting thing that they find comfort in possessions. Sheesh. And they hold on to these things like that greedy fool did, right? And listen, I'm preaching to myself. We hold on to these things, that's the investment, car hoarding, and, it's stuff that makes me feel safe. And then Jesus comes and he tells us, don't worry, you are enough. You are enough. And I am enough for you. Our security comes from God, not from goods. Our security comes from God and not from goods, friends. We need to learn how to trust God. Instead of putting our trust in the possession, we need to put our trust in our priest, our high priest, our Father, our one that loves us. And he says, guys, I am enough. You are enough. You don't need possessions to prove that to anyone. And I thought, geez, how well are we doing in this area of our lives? How well are we doing in trusting God, just as a whole? Because I don't think I always pass this test. I always want to fix things. I want to prepare things, and I want to have all the answers to things, instead of just letting go and trusting God. And you say, but why is trust important? Well, friends, now more than ever, the world is watching us. That's why trust is important now. Because the world's watching. They want to see how you behave when you lose your house and your possessions and your jobs. They want to see if you stress and worry and have anxiousness just like everyone else. They want to see how much you are trusting God. Is there a visible difference between being a Christian and a non-Christian? I don't know. How much are we trusting God? And I'm asking myself, but why is it so hard for me to let go of stuff? Why is it hard for me when you have to let go of a possession? Why is it so hard? And then I read this quote. The world makes us believe that if we have enough, then we are enough. And if we have nothing, then we are nothing. And I thought to myself, geez, that's why we find so much comfort in possessions. It's because we're trying to prove to the world that we are enough. And then Jesus comes and he says, you don't have to prove to the world that you have enough. The world needs to see through you that Jesus is enough. It's a big difference. It's not about proving that we are enough. It's about proving that Jesus is enough for us. That's what we need to prove. But the world is watching, friends. They want to see how God's people are handling this pandemic. Are we helping others? Are we reaching out? Are we a church that says we love and care for others? Or are we a church that shows we love and care for others? Saying and showing two different things altogether, friends. Are we holding on or are we letting go? Are we hoarding or are we trusting? What are we doing, friends? There's a friend that I serve with on the Barbarians, and she's such an example to us. And I've just many a times just seen her how she trusts God. She just gives and gives and gives, no matter what the economy says, no matter what their business cash flow says, no matter what black and white says, that the facts that, hey, things are broekskier. She doesn't care. Her trust in God is so visible that it actually draws people close to Jesus because of her trust in God. She gives relentlessly, doesn't matter what. And the other night we sat at a Barbarians meeting and I said to her, girl, how? How do you always give so much and you just gaan aan? You know, this is a time you need to hold back a bit. And she says, believe me, my boy, you can never outgive God. And then I'm like, I've heard that before. And then she pauses and she's like, believe me, I've tried. You can never, ever outgive God, she says. And I find so much inspiration in that. When do we give? Always. Not when there's plenty. When there's little, you give. God prompts you. You respond to that and you give. She brings God so much glory through what she does. And then there's other people that don't even attend church often, and yet you see more action through them. They reflect Jesus better than the people going to church Sunday after Sunday. Sheesh, there's people that I know that has done things for me. There's a friend that I know and I love him dearly. When we were supposed to change a gearbox on one of my Beetles, and as we about to get started, a couple rocks up at our house for counseling. I'm in my overalls, ready to spanner, and my mate says, no, don't worry, you go help them, pray for them, I'll be in the garage. Till 9 o'clock that night, spending time with a couple. I get out and my friend has changed the whole gearbox himself. I honor him. I honor him for that because you know what? That is, his actions speak 10 times louder than his words. Don't need to come to church every Sunday and say, oh, I'll help you. And then when you phone him, hey, I need help. Oh, sorry, man, I'm busy. Push on his button and he's there. And I respect that 100 times more. He loves Jesus visibly. Without saying a word, you can just see how it radiates. Another friend of mine, I had lunch with him just a week before Sani. And he's a businessman in our church. And he was sitting there and I'm like, hey, we're catching up. We're having a coffee. How's things going? How's business? You know, usual talk. And he says, but it's been hard. I had to turn down business deals that are worth millions because people wanted bribes. People wanted bribes, so I had to turn away over 40 million rands worth of orders because of bribes. Yes, and I wish that friend was here today because I want to honor him. He remained steadfast and unshakable, man. How tough is it to stand up and do what is right when the times are so desperate? The temptation is there just to take, you know what? You secure your future. No. God secures your future. Not a bribe. Not a bribe. Don't get bribed by the world, friends. God secures your future, not possessions. Our security comes from God, not goods. And I believe that this friend, God will secure his future for generations to come. Not just for this lifetime, not just until next month, for generations to come because of his obedience to God. He's been upstanding and real before God. You know how tough that must be? To go to your salespeople and saying, listen, I decline that order. What? Commission on 40 million? Or you principles. We give God the glory in this business. We don't bow down to the standards of the world. You can't bribe your way to heaven, friends. Richness towards God, that's what's going to get us there. So everything in preparation. In preparation for what? A preparation to follow Jesus well. In preparation to reflect Jesus well. We can come to church Sunday after Sunday and not reflect Jesus to anyone. How sad would that be? And maybe this is old news for you today. It brings me to my next point. Preparation step 4. PS4, not the PlayStation, guys. PS4. Be watchful. Be watchful. So Jesus shares a parable in Luke 12, verse 35, and we're going to read there from verse 35. And he says, "Be dressed and ready for service, and keep your lamps burning, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet. So, when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes." And let's carry on reading in verse 40. "You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him." Be watchful. Today's purpose of today's message is to get us watchful, to get us ready, to prepare us. It's old news maybe, but I'm praying that today God stirs your heart. May you see this in a new light, the story of the Samaritan, the story of Zacchaeus. May you see those things in new light. Why are we giving? We're not giving to glorify ourselves. We are giving to glorify God, to show that our trust is in God. And there's no need to explain this parable. There's no need, because it's logic. Just be ready, be dressed. Wait for me, I'm coming. But you don't know when. You don't know when, but come. In closing, let's recap on these 4 PSs, these 4 preparation steps, friends. PS1, don't fall into the trap of hypocrisy. Let's walk the talk. Let's align our behavior with our beliefs. Let's align our behavior with our beliefs. PS2, don't be greedy. Before you make your next investment, sir, before you make your next investment, I want to ask you to please first invest in the riches of a relationship with Jesus Christ. Invest your time in things of eternal value, not of value to this world. And PS3, don't worry. Stop. Rest. Refuel with the things of God. And as a result, your trust in God will be visible for all to see. Stop, rest, and refuel. PS4, be watchful. Be well prepared. Get dressed and expectantly be on the lookout. Expectant. Let's be expectant, church. See, you don't want to be like that lady at the Starbucks I told you about in the beginning, right? You don't want to get caught up when Jesus comes again and you're still running to-do lists and you're still running, ticking off bucket list stuff. You don't want him waiting at your gate today and you're not there and you're not ready. We all love surprises, but that's one surprise you're not going to love so much. And I pray that today's message really helps steer us in the direction and helps prepare us to be more Christ-like. You see, Christ-likeness is not speaking the language, it's actually the actions. It's the ways, not the words. To be more Christ-like is to be more like him and do the things he done. And he warns us and he says, don't be hypocrites. Don't be greedy. Don't worry and watch for me, I'm coming. Are you ready today? Maybe he might be at your gate.